We have a huge update to go over today as an insider has revealed that multiple Leafs moves are incoming and following what has been a wild summer surrounding reports regarding Leafs moves specifically as it pertains to Nick Robertson and Jack Roslovic. Multiple new insiders, including one huge report in particular, has revealed big information surrounding Brad Treliving's next move and his plans as the offseason inches closer and closer to its close. We're going to break that down as well as discuss a few other Leafs updates on this episode, folks. Before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support's been fantastic. About 70% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed to the channel. Thank you guys for your support. Darius, a lot to go over today, and things are actually starting to pick up in the trade world now. The signing world, free agency as it pertains to the Leafs. Super late in the off season, and we kind of figured this would be the way that it went after things were quiet for as long as they were. We have a bunch of new reports, including, like you saw in the intro video there, Chris Johnston. But let's start with this here. Brand new report. There have been talks around the NHL that the Maple Leafs are open to moving forward Nick Robertson. A potential move would be viewed as something that has been in the works for a long time if it were to happen. There's some talk out there that the Leafs are open to moving Robertson. That's not necessarily a new development. He did ask for a trade publicly last summer and hasn't always been happy with his opportunity in Toronto. We've discussed this on the channel a lot. It makes sense for them to move off of Nick Robertson. They have a ton of players that can do what not necessarily Nick Robertson can do at his peak, but there's not a lot of spots open right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs on that bottom six. And ultimately, it seems like the Leafs are prepared to move off of Nick Robertson, especially if we'll dive into later, Jack Roslovic has become more real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, this is something that they've probably kicked tires on before. And I mean, he requested a trade. We covered it last summer, right? He did not like his deployment with the team. I think he got a more of an opportunity last season. Like he played in more games. I think his production was down a little bit, but that line at times, him on the third line looked really good and like had some purpose throughout the season. So, him coming into this season with some of the players they've added, I think that he's like not a fringe player. Like he's definitely an NHL player, right? Like if he goes to any other team, he is in the NHL full time, right? And I think for the Leafs, he pretty much is that anyway. But I think that he's kind of in and out of the lineup. Like he's either on the third line or nothing for this team. And they brought in a bunch of guys who, Nick Waugh, Dakota Joshua, they're also third liners, right? So where does that leave him? And if they make a move for a guy who can play in the top six, Domi's going to have to move down to the third line wing. So that pushes Robertson even further out of the picture. So I think that, again, things are starting to pick up a little bit. They're starting to kick tires on things. Ultimately, we're going to get to it in a second. If they're thinking of moving Robertson for this move that we're going to get to in a second, it doesn't really make sense to me because I don't know if it necessarily makes you better and you're taking on more salary cap and more salary in that way. So it doesn't necessarily make sense. But Nick Robertson in or out of the lineup, I think he's a third liner on this team still. So if he's not happy with his deployment or where he's playing, I'm sure he would do well on another team, but that's just what the Leafs are at this point. Like they have too many bodies on this team.
Yeah, most of the lineups that we're seeing online don't have Nick Robertson in there as the third lineup. Of course, he will be if he plays. And just to clarify here, Chris Johnson said it's not certain a deal happens before camp begins, but maybe there's a window here. Teams start juggling their rosters through camp and towards opening night, of course, through training camp, that is. So maybe there'll be an opportunity for them to move on from him or another player to create some breathing room. Now, let's dive into it now. Again, keep in mind, we're going to be talking about Jack Roslovic. He is not a trade target. He is a free agent, so they would be signing him. But of course, I mean, you can't have Nick Robertson, Jack Roslovic, David Kampf, Calle Jarnkrok, all these guys in the team, Michael Pezzetta. Robertson's probably the easiest to trade as it pertains to those group of guys. Now, it says as far as what kind of return the Leafs would want in a Robertson deal, one thing is in Toronto is the cupboards are relatively bare because they've been a trade deadline buyer. They're in a position to be open-minded about the return. So keep that in mind, and we'll of course have another video probably covering that as it gets closer. But Frank Saravalli came out and said that Jack Roslovic remains unsigned, but that there are still plenty of teams interested in him after a strong season last year in Carolina. So this is where things get very interesting because we know the Leafs are, according to Frank, I think at the forefront of the Jack Roslovic sweepstakes, I guess, if you want to call him that. Now, it wouldn't be a Nick Robertson trade for Jack Roslovic. That's not how things work. He's a free agent. But they could move off of Robertson for a more underwhelming package, similar to what's alluded here, whether that be maybe a third-round pick, fourth-round pick, which is not good, but it's something. And then, of course, you open up a little bit of salary, but most importantly, you then get his replacement, who I think is unequivocally better, and that's Jack Roslovic, especially at the NHL level. And then, of course, there you go. You have your guys. You still need to move off of Kampf and Jarnkrok, probably, but at least Brad Treliving can say to himself, okay, we got some sort of asset for someone who wasn't going to play.
Yeah, so based on all of this information that's out there now, and Friedman's alluded to the fact that the Leafs are a front runner in the Roslovic sweepstakes, if you want to call it that at this point too. So it's not just Saravalli saying stuff like that. Friedman's saying it as well, and some other insiders too. But based on all this information, what I think is going to happen is there's not going to be a trade before the season starts or before they report for camp and the preseason. There will not be a move. But I think it's very odd that Roslovic has been linked to the Leafs all summer and he hasn't signed with anybody else, even though there's multiple teams that do want his services. Same thing goes for Matt Grzelcyk. So what I think is going to happen is both of them are going to sign PTOs with the Leafs. They're going to come into camp. If they don't work out, great, then you don't sign them. If they do work out, then I do see them moving a guy like Robertson, so then they can sign because the money would work out in that way. Remember, the Leafs are not up against the cap. They have about $2 million in cap space. We keep talking about how they have to trade Calle Yarncroke and David Camp. They don't have to. They can go into the season the way they want to, of course, or the way they are, excuse me. But obviously the money would work in that way. You can bring in Roslovic. He could play on your top line, which I think would be, the move if he were to come in. That's what they're thinking, to play with Matthews. Then Domi moves down to the third line. That's a little weird to me. I think Domi does have already built-in chemistry with Matthews, so they'll figure that out. But anyway, they would still then have cap space if they were moving Robertson out to then go and sign Matt Grzelcyk as well. So I feel like both of them are going to sign PTOs with the Leafs. They're going to bring them in, see how everyone's meshing with each other, what the chemistry is looking like, what's happening with Easton Cowan too, because if he's going to make this team, it's going to be on the third line. So you have like 5 guys, I think, coming into camp fighting for one spot, which I think is extremely healthy, by the way. And I think that whoever rises to the top will take that spot. So I don't see a trade happening before preseason starts. I think they want everyone to come into camp and preseason, see how everyone's mixing and gelling with each other. And if those guys like Roslovic and Grzelcyk, if they do end up coming in on PTOs, again, that's just my prediction. They haven't been signed or anything yet, but I think it's weird. We've gone the whole summer without them being signed. If they rise above and it looks like they'll make the team, obviously they have more NHL experience than a guy like Nick Robertson, so it could make a lot of sense. But things are going to get interesting. I think they're going to, pump the brakes on a move until we're closer to the regular season. But I think depending on what happens in training camp, we'll get some answers on guys like Cowan. We'll get answers on McMahon, Robertson. What are the new guys saying? Where are they going to play? And then based off of that, then they will make a trade. There will be a move before the regular season starts. It's just, I don't think it's going to be as soon as we all thought.
Yeah, and obviously we saw that with Pacioretty last year. The Leafs signed Max Pacioretty to a PTO, and we all knew it was a phony PTO, if you want to call it that, in the sense of everyone knew he was going to sign. Feels like there's been just as much smoke around Jack Roslovic. I mean, if they can get Grzelcyk or Roslovic on a PTO, that'd be ideal. I mean, Roslovic, there were conversations about him wanting 2 years. Clearly, he would have already signed elsewhere if he was going to get that 2-year, $6 million deal or whatever he was looking for, even $4 million deal over 2 years. So it's going to be interesting. You can see here, it's amazing now, but it's likely no longer relevant. All the more shocking that Jack Roslovic is still in the market, $4 million level, more than $5 million contribution. It's of course talking about their advanced analytics stuff, and 22 goals, still without a team. What options does he have left? Might be a PTO for the Leafs. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on the Robertson situation, the Roslovic situation. Something big is brewing, and we'll keep you up to date every step of the way. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.